Hey, welcome back. This is chapter 3 of Graham the Gargoyle, Family Volcano. The early morning sky greeted Graham with glorious pinks and oranges playing across the horizon. Dawn had arrived. He glanced out his window, staring at Mount Prometheus in the distance. He was late. He imagined Blord and his crew already at Parsons Plateau, picking on his troll friend. Ott was an early riser, and always early for anything. He had probably gotten there even before the bullies to case the place. On their way home from the Mucka field last night, the troll had warned Graham to be prepared for any pranks or traps. Ott was certain Blord would have something up his sleeve in regards to the race. Graham washed away his face in the oval basin in the bathroom he shared with Flenn. The washcloth he used on his face was properly hung, a sure sign his sister had tidied up and was already at the table, more than likely studying for a pop quiz. He dabbed some scented powder under his wings to lessen the smell of mucka root and soil. He had taken a quick dunk in Rigby's pond on the way home last night, removing the most apparent mud from his body. He stole a look at his teeth. They looked fine. He'd skip them today. He dashed out of the bathroom and entered the kitchen to see his sister and mother busy working on Flenn's science project. The oversized volcano took up the entire table. The pair was putting the final painted touches on the oversized landform. Flenn was infinitely proud of her handiwork. His mom turned to him and said, "You're up awfully early. What dragged you out of bed?" "I have to run a few errands with Aunt. Don't worry, I won't be late for school," Graham said in rapid-fire fashion as he made for the front door. His mother liked how he championed Ott's people by befriending the troll. It had been her idea to let Ott come to school with him. She knew how much he needed a friend. Any friend. Maybe his little lie would get him out of stain for breakfast. "No breakfast this morning?" his mom said, arching the rounded cluster of horns at the apex of her brow. "Can't. Got too much to do." Graham was almost out the door when he heard his sister's grating voice. "He doesn't like my volcano, Mom," Flenn said, adding a pouting face to punctuate her statement. Being young and her skin a slightly paler orange than his, Flenn worked her cuteness to maximum effect. For everyone else, her wide eyes and small mouth were hard to resist. She had no horns or spurs protruding from her chin or forehead yet, so she looked much younger than she was. She was a late bloomer in that department. In regards to her wings, she was ahead of Graham. She had the strongest wings in her class and could already take slight hops and extended glides for any launch platform. Thankfully, she never did this in front of him, a consideration he deeply appreciated. "Graham, you don't have a minute or two to see what Flenn has worked so hard on these last few days?" It was a question, but came out more like a motherly suggestion. "She's turning it in early today for bonus points." "Of course she is." He rolled his eyes out of sight of his mother. A minute in Little Sisterland was more like an hour. "Your errands with Ott can wait. You can give your sister some time, can't you?" "Yes, Mom." He strolled over to the kitchen table, but didn't sit. Flenn's face switched from sad to happy in a flash. She produced a stack of note cards from behind the volcano, out of sight from Graham up until now. "I can practice my presentation with you." Graham kicked out a chair and slumped into it. He flopped both arms up on the table edge and laid his chin down in defeat. There was no way he was getting to the plateau any time soon. Once his sister got started, it was hard to cut her off. "Go ahead. Dazzle me with the facts you dug up." Flenn shuffled her note cards, tapped them neatly on the table to straighten them up, and then looked out at her audience of one. She cleared her throat and began. "Good morning, class. As you know, we have been studying the geology of Cascade. Miss Brennan defines geology as the study of the Earth and the forces that shape it. Since we no longer live on Earth anymore, we study Cascade's geology." He tried desperately to find a spot on the wall to occupy his attention, while Flenn droned on. His sister meant well, but she had too many questions and way too many answers no matter the subject. He couldn't even count how many times he had been cornered and subjected to every minute detail about a particular native plant or animal she had researched. Just the other day, she had pelted him with at least 30 facts about mosses found in the area. Mosses! Their parents called her need to broadcast her knowledge endearing. Graham called it torture. Graham shifted in his seat. Their mother shot him a look. "Volcanoes happen on Earth and on Cascade. I have made a model of Mount Prometheus." She gestured toward the project. "It's an active volcano that we live next to. Flenn paused and looked up from her note cards. This would be where I uncover the volcano to show the class. It's very nice, Graham mumbled, forcing himself to examine the landform. Flenn took his response and scrutiny as a sign to continue. Mount Prometheus is a cinder cone volcano. Lava doesn't spurt out of it. When it erupts, cinder and ash explode outward. That's why it sometimes has a dark cloud of smoke coming out of it. The council isn't worried about it as it's such a small volcano and not much of a threat. It's close, but not too close. Graham needed at least 10 minutes to make it to the plateau. That's excellent, dear. Their mother clapped her hands enthusiastically. Flenn smiled. I have more. Graham looked at his mom for any sign he could excuse himself. With a simple nod, she directed him to return his attention to Flenn. This next section is where I pull down the class map and point out Cascade's 8 other volcanoes. I have their heights, what type they are, and whether they are active, dormant, or extinct. Mom said I shouldn't mention how the skeleton has his kingdom deep beneath Mount Crag. She thinks that might scare some of my classmates. I can see Lola Stimmons getting a little freaked out by that. Flenn looked eagerly at Graham. Should I tell you all about the other volcanoes, even though we don't have a map here? Graham hopped out of his seat. Mom, I really have to go. I won't be able to get everything done before school if I stay any longer. She walked over to Flenn and gave her a big hug. You are so smart. I think you've filled your brother's head to capacity. I bet his teacher won't be able to fill it any further. Flenn giggled and embraced her, dropping her note cards to the ground. Their mom bent to pick up the cards. She looked at Graham. You can go, but your sister is going to share the rest with you at dinner tonight, okay? Graham grabbed a satchel from its hook and streaked toward the front door. Great, thanks. His mother strode over to the door and held it open. Be sure you're on time for school. I will, promise. Graham ran out the door and down the front path, taking the worn stones 2 at a time. His grandfather called them flying stones if one could take them 3 at a time. Graham could, some of the time. To be fair, he usually could only leap over 2 of the well-spaced stepping stones, but that was better than nothing. He slipped past the open gate and down the path leading to the village. He stopped in his tracks at a line of taffy trees, then slowly turned around and walked back to the house. He re-entered and ambled over to his sister, who was securing her note cards with a stretchy length of wah-wah vine. He gave her a quick hug. Your volcano looks really nice, almost like the real thing. Flenn hugged him back, holding on to him longer than he did her. Thanks. Graham smiled and pulled free of his sister's grip. He was out the door and on his way not to school, but to deal with his own volcano. Graham followed the main path to the village until he could no longer see his house. After he was sure his mother wouldn't spot his minor detour, he took off, heading toward Parsons Plateau.